did you live your marriage with openness to the number of children God wanted to give you? I really want to trust in God and His plan for our marriage and family, but sometimes I struggle with the possibility of always being pregnant. I know about respecting my cycle if we think it's not time to have another baby, but where is the line between our will and God's will?
So this question, like the previous one, is a recognition. I want to do God's will. I'm looking at my heart, and I'm recognizing there are mixed motives in there. Yep. Every human heart, if you're honest, if you claim you're looking in your heart and you see no mixed motives whatsoever, not a single weed, it's just all wheat, well, that's proof that you're not all wheat, because that's pride. That is a lie. You've believed some lie, and that's a weed. So you got weeds just like the rest of us. So let's be at peace with the fact that there are weed and weeds growing together, not in the sense of I'm off the hook, but let's not be surprised when we recognize mixed motives. That said, certainly we can draw from our own married life. And I was just having a conversation. I don't even know if I shared this with you, Wendy. I was just having a conversation with our daughter, Grace. Remember that night everybody went in the house? We were having a fire in our fire pit, and Grace and I stayed up chatting away. And she was asking various questions about how many kids we have and what kind of discernment we went through. And because she's number 5, and we were talking about her being the caboose. And I was so delighted to share with her the stories of our discernment at that time. And we had gotten to the point, we had 3 children. You might have another story to tell from our own experience, but this is the one that comes to my mind. We had 3 children, and we were prayerfully considering a 4th. And you're a natural family planning instructor, and we had always understood the way your cycle worked, and not that it was always simple and easy. Sometimes there were difficulties there, but we were absolutely committed to honoring your cycle, honoring our fertility. And a practice that we brought into our marriage right from the start was whenever we came together as husband and wife in our marital union, to pray, Lord, if it is your will, let there be life. If it is your will, let there be life. So that was always our disposition. And even when we knew you were naturally infertile and we'd come together, we'd still pray, Lord, if it's your will, let there be life. And it set us in the right disposition also when we were yearning for a child. Our 3rd took how long? Like
a year.
Over a year of trying to conceive. And every month when your period came, the sadness was there. And we were really eagerly desiring a 3rd child. And that was certainly an education for me. But when we would come together, knowing it's peak fertile day, there's still no guarantees. And all we could pray and honestly give ourselves to was the prayer, Lord, if it is your will, let there be life.
Right.
So that's a prayer to pray. I'm saying whether you're desiring to avoid a conception or to have a conception, you're placing it in God's hands. He's the Lord and giver of life. So that's what's required of a husband and wife whenever they come together, to place their fertility entirely in God's hands. God is the master of a woman's cycle, so there's nothing incongruent in a naturally infertile time in saying, Lord, if it's your will, let there be life. What is your will? It's going to be manifested in the way He made your body and my body and the coming together of our bodies. I'm getting sidetracked now. What was the question?
Sort of the number of children and maybe
And
reasons for avoiding or
right.
spacing.
So we were prayerfully discerning, would we have number 4? And we had a couple years there where we were thinking maybe it was just going to be 3 children. And the demands of our lives, the financial situation, all kinds of things, all kinds of factors went into that. But then we realized our finances were easing up. Our 3rd was growing, and we were emotionally more ready to take on another child. And the Lord, we were less strict in our practice of abstaining during the fertile time. And thanks be to God, number 4 came along, and it was a joyful celebration. And then 2 years later, number 5 came along, and it was a joyful celebration. And we look back at that. And I think this is what I was saying to Grace around the fire pit that a couple weeks ago was, thank you, God, that we kept discerning. Because if we had just latched on to what we thought for a time, that we were only going to have 3, we have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old right now who wouldn't exist. And neither you nor I could possibly, or the rest of our children, or all the people who have been blessed by these 2 children, we can't fathom that possibility of them not existing. So my just advice to this questioner would be, keep the question on the table. Like, don't think done, over, already discerned that. Keep it an open question. Revisit it. Maybe for the next year, we need to abstain for X, Y, and Z reasons during the fertile time. There might be a time or a season in which you have a definitive, no, we're not going to try for another. But don't ever just say absolutely no way. Keep discerning. And I remember how this came up in the last couple of years when your cycle started to become irregular, and I started, just to my surprise, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe we should try for another one. Even at this older age, the Lord has not blessed us with another one, and probably never will, based on our age at this point. But yeah, keep the question on the table. What would be your thoughts, Wendy?
Yeah, I think I can recall early in our marriage that it felt like an unfamiliar task to discern this.
It was an unfamiliar task.
We learn things over time in our lives, and there's a time spent learning to discern. Right. And because of that unfamiliarity, I think I had these sort of antenna that would perk up when a couple ahead of us in the family planning journey would speak about their decisions. I wanted to know their reasons. I wanted to know their thinking, because it was helping me to make sense of our discernment. I can remember specifically hearing a husband, and they had, I don't remember, maybe 8 children, but he spoke of some of the spacing, and he said something like, pregnancy was very hard on my wife and she needed time to recover. And then he just went on in his conversation. But I remember holding that, okay, that must be something they talked about. That must be something they realized about their relationship or their experience that helped them in their discernment to avoid pregnancy. And I needed that kind of input from other couples. I think I hear in this question a certain what about you two? What did you, my antenna are up. What things did you look at? And certainly in this question, something she said was a fear of being always pregnant. Well, look at that. It might be just a sign of your own experience of pregnancy, which is certainly, a pregnancy is a gift, but it can have varying degrees of challenge depending on the person. And so that's the point where you're looking at what is our experience, or what are our resources as a couple. And I think that has been, part of the learning process, is to be able to gradually better understand what our mission is from the Lord in our family, in our home, in our marriage, and in the wider world, and what resources has the Lord blessed us with to enable us to either welcome another child or to avoid that. It's just been a journey of knowing ourselves better. Yes. And part of how we learn about ourselves is through times of suffering. Maybe this person who has 2 children, maybe they're close in age, and that can produce some suffering, because it can be demands that are kind of, maybe sometimes they feel like too much, or they stretch us, or they involve a lot of sacrifice, or just all kinds of factors. But those suffering times also, we're not far from the Lord. He's so close to us in our sufferings and wanting to assure us that He's with us, but also that He's helping us to gain wisdom in our understanding of our unique relationship and our unique abilities, and to feel a certain freedom not to overly compare ourselves to other families.
Yes, that's a trap.
Other couples. What if, everybody I know has at least this many children, or a child, when they are this age, or those kinds of comparisons. And the Lord really wants us to come to a place of peace in our knowing of one another, and His guiding our unique marriage and mission in this world.
Yes, and accepting peacefully our own limitations.
Mm-hmm.
You looked at me like I was not thinking clearly when a couple years ago I said, should we try for another? You looked at me like, you've been married to me all this time? You still do not know me?
Which is not to say a lack of love for babies and children at all. That is not it.
Right.
It has to do more
I don't know anybody.
Outside limitations.
I don't know anybody who has more love for babies than you, who I've ever met in my whole life. But I was not, there was a failure to understand your heart there, that this is our story.
Yeah.
And I need to know you, and you need to know me, and we need to be honest and open about all of these things, and not base our decision on looking over there at the Joneses or the Smiths or the Kavanaughs or whatever anybody else's last name might be, and saying, well, we'll do it like that, or we should do it like that, or we should be more like them, or no, what is the Lord asking of you as a unique, totally unique, unrepeatable couple with your own set of circumstances, limitations, gifts, challenges, etc. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click like and subscribe, and please leave a comment. If you'd like to learn more about the theology of the body, click on the link TOB for free. We will send you 3 free sessions to our introductory course. You can also learn about our patron community and become part of a global community of men and women who are learning, living, and sharing this vision. And hey, check out our events calendar. We might be coming to an area near you very soon.